We are Rogue Media Sports.
It is the Doomsday Podcast.
And it is Doomsday.
And Mosley and Werder still at the stadium, only a couple of hours after the Cowboys lost 28-25, which sounds thrilling. And I guess there was some drama in the fourth quarter. But Ed, it has, for the second consecutive week here, that it used to be you could count on the Cowboys. You could count off on playoff failure and regular season greatness at home.
Yeah.
And that's out the window now. They've been embarrassed 2 straight weeks. And much like, though, that we've seen in the past from this team, they do seem to take some solace in the frantic comeback in the last 10 minutes of the game to sort of get within striking distance. And even the quarterback
so
thinks
close
it's something.
to being the greatest comeback in franchise history, Matt.
Oh, man.
It would have been if they've been able to pull it off. If they convert those two-point conversions, they win the game. Would have been the biggest comeback in franchise history. Just imagine. They were so close to that.
Yeah.
But I think my biggest takeaway from this whole thing is this was a team that was known under Mike McCarthy for 2 things: being virtually unbeatable at home. They didn't lose at home during the regular season at all last year, the only team to accomplish that. And then they were known for their ability to bounce back from a loss, which they suffered last week. They were 12-2 coming off a loss under McCarthy. That's the best record in the NFL, tied with Buffalo. And yet both of those things were not factors today. They failed to follow those characteristics and instead absorb a horrific loss.
Mm-hmm.
They were down 28-6. They got run all over again. The defense looked like the Mike Nolan defense, which set a franchise record for most points allowed in Mike McCarthy's first season of 2020, which, that's the last time they started 1-2, by the way. So Mike Zimmer's defense has looked an awful lot like that. They had no answers in stopping one of the great running teams in football. We talked about it last week. The Ravens, their identity is being physical, running the football. They have the greatest running quarterback in football, and they signed Derrick Henry, the most physically intimidating running back in football. And he had 151 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. And, Zeke Elliott doesn't start for the second straight game. And Rico Dowdle just couldn't quite pull it off with his 8 touches for 31 yards.
I mean, is it a change of pace back if you go from sort of fast to pretty slow? Is that a good change of pace? And then they tried to work Deuce in there. I mean, honestly, one of their most effective players. And of course, they piled up some yardage late, which, may help with the window dressing. But, Lupke, the
Hunter.
Lupke, the
fullback.
I mean, the best, the downfield throwing game. And we're left with reporters asking after the game about body language and body. Oh my gosh, what about? Is that going to hurt the rest of the team? CeeDee Lamb. Ed, you and I have watched receivers for how many years around here have poor body language?
He looked like he was trying to catch a K-ball or something during the game. Second highest paid non-quarterback in football?
Yeah.
Highest paid quarterback in football. They're down 28-6 before they score a touchdown in the final 9 minutes and make a game of it. And it was a lot of it was garbage time.
Yeah.
They were in their 2-minute offense and they execute that so much better. They started the game in an unusual fashion, knowing now the defense just laid down last week and gave up 6 consecutive touchdowns for the Saints to start the game. McCarthy decided to take the ball first. He almost never does that. And what did Makmula or Israel Makmula, is that how you pronounce it?
Mukuamu. Yeah.
What did he say? We want the effing ball, and we'll take it right now.
In the mic. Yeah, hot mic.
A lot of confidence there. That quickly dissipated.
Yeah, thought about asking him that after the game. Okay, we got a lot to say. We have the stretch plays with his grades. We got
to talk about the locker room. Some of the things that were said in there were really perplexing to me.
I think so. And you and I, we're both in there to account for it all, including our time with Jerry Jones. Mike Hamilton from Rogue Media Network, please play the music. All right, and it is the Doomsday Podcast, often imitated, never duplicated, and we are proud to be in Jim and Sally Nation suite,
Barely.
high above. Well, we had wasn't the smoothest process in the world, but here we are in our palatial digs as always, and it was 28-25 doesn't sound like a beat down, but for the most of the day it was. And let's get right into some of the post game that we saw. And before we do that though, let's walk through this game a little bit. They come out, like you say, okay, we'll take the ball, and then once the Ravens got it, first of all, it's become sort of high comedy. I mean, I know it's painful to Cowboys fans. I thought, by the way, my tweets today, I feel like they were really resonating with people. Had several things I was able to. I'm sure Cowboys fans appreciate that. A lot of those were at Jerry's expense. But this team has perhaps one of the greatest field goal kickers ever in the history of the NFL. That's really what he's becoming. Like, he hits a 65-yarder like it's nothing. And yet it was like they made it 7-3, and it was funny to see. They hits a 65-yarder, and McCarthy was over there giving it to, oh, yes.
We got three. And nobody else in the league would have scored on that possession, but we did.
We did it. We did it. They make it 7-3. How quickly after that was it 14-3? Like,
and 21-3.
I'm to the point where, like, when they force a team to punt, it feels like a huge breakthrough.
Well, and then they did it. The defense did get 2 stops back to back early in the second half, and the Cowboys didn't score on either one of the ensuing possessions. You know, that's one of the things Dak talked about this week was, and he really said it again after the game. He's like, hey, when you're playing an MVP, a 2-time MVP, a quarterback, like you got to score 30 points to have a chance. And we didn't do that. And, we didn't respond. We didn't help our defense. He's been pretty insistent upon, hey, this is as much an offensive issue as it is a defensive issue, but the defense is historically bad. This is the most touchdowns they've ever allowed rushing in their history in 3 games.
Yeah. Wow. That is historical.
And the Ravens I mean, Lamar Jackson's a unique guy. He's 21-1 now in games against NFC opponents because teams aren't used to playing with against that kind of quarterback speed. And then you put Derrick Henry in there. How did they come in here 0-2 is the question. But so he's a unique guy. They put up 250 yards rushing on the Cowboys. They already came into the game with 3 250-yard rushing games against the Cowboys. That's the most in NFL history against a single non-conference opponent. And now they put another one on them. I mean, that's just what they do.
It was, and they just owned the Cowboys at the line of scrimmage. Henry started to lean on them heavily in the second half. And Ed, it led to me at one point asking, and you and I were both over there with Jerry in the big scrum, which you put on Facebook this week, showing, letting everybody see how crazy a scene is. And we all have our places we usually stand, don't we? I have to I slither around behind him there, and people seem to enjoy seeing some of my investigations that I have. But I just asked him what I thought was a pretty straightforward question. Did watching Derrick Henry pile up those yards make you regret not signing him? And boy, Jerry, who usually expounds on kind of everything, was very quick. And he said, no, because we couldn't afford him. And
well, they couldn't afford him because, they made Ezekiel Elliott the highest paid running back in football in one of the worst contracts that they've ever signed with a player. And then they paid Tony Pollard on the franchise tag at the top of the market. And this year they decided we're not paying big money to a running back this year. And it looks like they didn't. I guess when Jerry Jones said in the offseason, Dak's going to have to do more with less, he really meant it. I didn't know it was going to be this much less, and probably neither did Dak. But they have no running game. They have no dynamic playmakers in the offensive backfield.
No.
And they have precious few elsewhere. And when CeeDee Lamb can't catch a ball, he must have had 4 or 5 drops. Didn't even talk to the media after the game today. And it was so bad. I don't think most people view me as a real optimistic guy when it comes to the Cowboys. And yet here I found myself behind Jerry Jones next to you. asking him, Jerry, do you feel like this is a more positive outcome than last week when you got boat raced by 25 points? Today it was only 3. I mean, it was worse than that most of the game. But the way you came back, and he's like right away, no, it was horrible. It's unacceptable.
Yeah.
I didn't expect this to happen. So,
and it was a fake. It was like a fake comeback because they've done this before. It goes on even back to the Garrett days.
Oh, he was big on that.
And
he showed a lot of fight out there.
And after the game, Mike McCarthy did think it was something they could build on. The quarterback echoed that. Dak said, hey, it's a short week. This is something we can build on, show some fight. But I mean, again, it's like these teams, and it's kind of natural, lean on them the whole game and kind of get bored. They're kind of like, let's just sit on this lead. And then the Cowboys got frantic and worked their way sort of back into the game. I mean, I thought it would be interesting if they got one crack at it with about 2 minutes left, but they couldn't get the stop they needed. That was a big play out to Flowers, I think, in the flat. And
3rd and 6.
Yeah, 3rd and 6.
Trayvon Diggs was very hard on himself in the locker room for allowing that to happen.
Yeah.
Put it all on himself. There was a lot of accountability comments in the locker room.
Yeah, not the head coach, really, but the locker room.
I thought, DeMarcus Lawrence said something like, we got to be more professional, more consistent, but we've got the guys in this room to do it. Now we just got to go F and do it. And you were closer to Micah Parsons than I was, but it sounded to me like he was trying to reinforce the leader he is in that locker room, in his own mind at least, as probably the best defensive player, an elite defensive player. And whether he's seen like that by his teammates, I'm not so sure. So I think he needs to be careful about making sure he's including himself when he's critical of their play, which he should be. And he seemed to be saying, like, people aren't trusting the scheme. They aren't playing the game plan. You got to trust the man behind you to do his job, so forth and so on. And then even Dak was talking about guys need to do more than just what they do at the facility and do what they do on the practice field to prepare themselves. Like the young guys, I assume he's talking about, that they need to, it's not just your practice reps that get you ready. Like, you got to do more. So it seemed like there was a lot of suggestion that this team is, they're not being professional in their approach, and they're not totally committed to playing their absolute best, at least not everybody.
All right, Dak did end up in that frantic comeback, 28 of 51 for 379 yards.
Most passing attempts in his career.
2 touchdowns. So he did sling it around the yard.
And he got it out of the end zone on what could have been a safety. I think they got a break on that.
Yeah, I mean, if that's a rule that you can throw it to your guard, that's a bad rule. Like, it seems like most times if there's nobody, even if you're in the pocket like he was, if you're not throwing it to anybody, well, he was throwing it to an illegal guy.
Touch by Tyler Smith, who caught the ball and showed very little ability to get yak after the reception.
He's got to run a better route on that play.
I did reach out to an NFL official that I know.
Okay.
And asked him about that, the way this was interpreted. And he said, quote, "The enforcement for illegal touching is at the line of scrimmage with no loss of down. So that's why the Ravens declined the penalty." Then he said, "I thought it should have been grounding, which would have been a loss of down. Cowboys dodged one there. And intentional grounding in the end zone would have been a safety."
Yeah. Oh, so this official did think they should have called it intentional grounding
in the end zone,
and that would have resulted in a safety.
Correct.
I kind of thought the same thing. And I thought the officials had to have a long discussion to kind of come up with what it was there. Looking at this thing in several areas, first of all, Jerry made the point to us that he does not put this on his running back by committee. I just looked. Rico Dowdle had, and I like when they call him like Didle or something. People call him different things. Jerry calls him different things. 8 carries for 32 yards. You're right. First 2 series, he's out there. Then you run Zeke in there. And then Deuce gets a couple of and then you may have, let's let Turpin have a jet sweep or something. We thought it was going to be a bad group. It is a bad group. It feels a little bit like, obviously, McCarthy doesn't really value running. He never has. And so I don't think it's going to cause them to do what they had to do years ago in trading for Amari Cooper. Like they're going to go, but it leads people to ask the question, what about Dalvin Cook? Now he's sitting over there.
Did you see his numbers last year? Worse than Zeke's.
Yeah.
And he's the same age. Now, people with the Ravens who he finished last year with told me, hey, he has good feet, catches the ball well, great guy in the locker room. I mean, you got to give him a chance at this point. Like he has to play in New York, and they have to win in New York. If there's any reason for optimism, it's because they've won 12 straight games against the Giants with Dak as a quarterback. If they go up there and lose that streak, they lose to the Giants, it's over. I know it's a month into the season.
1-3. And you lose that Giants.
First of all, they're 1-2 now. They've lost 2 straight home games this season. Never mind Green Bay last season. So they're not invincible at home. McCarthy throughout his career is a 500 coach on the road, and 4 of their next 5 games are on the road. And the home games against the Lions. Yeah.
I mean, the one thing this horrible defensive start has helped McCarthy on is that if Jerry had to fire him during the season, you can't really give it to Zimmer, right?
You give it to Fossil. He's got the best player on the team, Brandon Aubrey.
Bones Fossil.
Hey, the first team to recover an onside kick with the new rules where you have to declare your intention in the fourth quarter. They still recovered an onside. That's the first time it's happened.
The 35, you have to declare it, and you do it. And then they did the wobble. What do you call that? The watermelon?
Yeah, they tried that before. Yeah. They beat Dan Quinn on that.
Yeah.
Speaking of Dan Quinn, and getting back to just how horrifically this team has started these games at home the last couple of weeks. This is the second time in 2 games that the Cowboys have allowed 3 touchdowns in the first half at home. They've allowed 5 in the first half against the Saints last week and 3 today. So it's the second time in a row that's happened. In Dan Quinn's time here, 3 seasons, they allowed that to happen 1 time at home in the regular season. That's how bad these starts have been. So you throw the Packers in there, in the last 3 first halves, Packers 27, Cowboys 7. Saints 35, Cowboys 16. Ravens 21, Cowboys 6. The game's over at halftime. I mean, Dak Prescott's 1-14 when his team's down by 10 points or more at halftime. His one win was against Dan Quinn in 2020 and the Falcons. He got fired as a result of that.
Yeah.
So that's how bad it's been. The defense is abysmal. You can't win with the defense playing like that.
No, and right now, Zimmer in coming back is losing all sorts of credibility. What's left to happen, and Zimmer said he could fix it. He has fixed it. He's done it in the past, and it didn't happen this week. And you brought up Micah Parsons. Micah is trying to be accountable and is really forthcoming and interesting after these losses. I can remember some Cowboys teams where nobody wanted to talk after a loss. A lot of people were doing what CD Lamb did and just getting out of there. And Micah waits, stands in his locker, and he gives extremely thoughtful answers. Now, I think part of the problem is he has no clue. Like, same thing with DeMarcus Lawrence. Like, they're like, and of course somebody will always ask the same question. Did they do anything differently than you thought they were going to do? And he's like, no, they didn't do anything. We knew what they were going to do with 42. We knew what they were going to do with their tailback. And he was kind of like, and then he gave I thought this was interesting. He said that the people playing behind him when he's up playing defensive end, playing linebacker, have to trust him. And they're not trusting him to do what he does. And so there seems to be what he's saying is a complete lack of trust. And so I asked the question because he seemed to be calling his teammates out last week. And he kind of came close to doing that again. And I just said, is it an effort thing? Are you seeing an issue with the effort? Because that's what he seemed to be saying. Hey, the tape will show it. The tape was the effort there. And he basically said, it's there in flashes. We play in flashes, but that's good enough. And then it got really personal with him. He's like, I've dreamed of playing for this franchise and to playing to this standard. Now, what is the Cowboy standard now? Well, I don't know. I mean, is it what it was 30 years ago? Not really. I mean, they're so far removed from that. None of these guys were alive for any of that, so they're 29 years away from any true success, which is at least getting to an NFC title game. And this is a dead coach walk-in right now. I mean, think about what we were talking about just a couple of weeks ago. It's like, well, or even before the season, they're going to have to probably get to past the divisional title, get to an NFC title game, which we both think is kind of ludicrous. given this team's history. Now it's like, is Mike going to make it through the season? I mean, this team has underperformed, I mean, unbelievably so in these last 2 weeks.
So at one point today, I actually started thinking about that possibility. And the only time we know Jerry Jones has fired a coach during the season was Wade Phillips, when the front office determined the players had quit on him. They, at that time, had this horrific Monday Night Football loss or Sunday Night Football loss at Green Bay, like 45-17. They were 1-7. So it was 8 games into the season. They had lost 5 straight by about 100 points total. And yeah, Jerry's created the same potential for that kind of decision now, because he has not invested anything financially in any of these coaches beyond this season. And so if it keeps going bad like this, do the players get to a point where they quit because they don't feel like they're accountable to this coaching staff? It didn't happen today, because they came back in the fourth quarter and they made a game of it. And they'll take something positive out of that. Whether it's meaningful or not, I don't know. But I asked Jerry about that. I asked him, does that show that the players still believe in these coaches? And he said he's not worried right now about whether the players believe in the coaches or the coaches believe in the players. That's not a concern right now. But it could become one if this continues.
Oh, I think so. I think so. And right now, everybody's just kind of walking around in the wilderness. I mean, this was, again, 21-6, then it gets to 28-6, and the team really didn't get involved in this game until the start of the fourth quarter. Yeah.
There's 9 minutes to go, and they score their first touchdown on offense.
And they just,
and they're playing, remember, they're playing against the number 32 ranked passing defense in football. You've got the richest guy in football throwing the ball and the second richest guy catching it. Well, being thrown too. He didn't catch it. And when he did catch it, he fumbled it in the red zone. If that doesn't happen, they maybe win the game in the end. So yeah, there's a lot of directions to point the finger. And to what you were saying earlier about Jerry, and he kind of blew it off this week about the running back thing. He thinks it's a media fabrication is what he said it was. I mean, they haven't had a running back gain more than 40 yards in any of these 3 games. Nobody's busted off a big run except for CeeDee Lamb. And it's okay, fine, given your circumstance and how your team's put together, with what you're paying the quarterback and what you're paying the wide receiver and what you're probably going to have to pay the pass rusher. I get it. You can't pay all those positions. So, okay, we're not going to pay the running back position. We're going to let Pollard go, and we're not going to pay the running back position. Fine, draft a guy. Guess what? For the last 5 years, they have not drafted a running back in any round. That's preposterous.
Mm-hmm. But it speaks to what this head coach is. Even though at times he said he's wanted to run, he doesn't. And Jerry convinced himself, or somebody convinced him, that that's the place to save money. And is that a trend across the NFL?
Fine, save money. Draft a young, explosive player.
You're right. Get somebody in there.
Like you get a guy in the 4th round, like they did with Pollard. You don't have to draft Zeke Elliott at the top of the fourth overall. You can get it. Pollard proved that.
But they got all these other rookies that are out there, making.
Well, they just had a bunch. They put themselves in a situation where, geez, we need all these offensive linemen. Geez, we need linebackers. We need defensive tackles.
Yeah,
I mean, when you come into a game and you're thinking against the Ravens, you're like, my God, I hope Mozzie Smith can make it to the game. He's missed 2 practices with a background. Geez, maybe we can hold him off. If Mozzie's one of the greatest disappointments they've had as a 1st-round pick. And they're praying to God he's going to play in the game.
To even get him to the game. Who else? They have Linval Joseph. Now they've brought Carlos Watkins back. And
Carl Lawson, they played inside.
They had to run one guy out of town that they brought in. Was that Jordan Phillips?
Well, they
put him on IR.
They put him on IR with claiming he had a wrist injury, which he denied.
Yeah.
And I think it was more of a question of effort than it was anything else. And they're hoping that maybe in 4 weeks you'll be in better shape because you weren't a part of the offseason, weren't a part of the training camp. I mean, how do you wait until training camp's over to sign veteran defensive tackles and then play them and expect them to stop the run?
Mm-hmm. And
that's it.
With each passing week, you brought him up. Quinn no matter what he's doing with the Commanders, I mean, his time, everybody was ready to, because of that Green Bay game, to see him go. I mean, they were extremely productive with him and won a ton of ball games with him as the defensive coach. And right now, as much as you and I personally like Mike Zimmer, this is a disaster.
Well,
like the last 2 weeks have been, I mean, as you were putting the historical perspective, but just to the eye test, this is as bad a stretch as we've seen from a Cowboys defense in a long, long time.
Mike Nolan, who was the worst ever.
Yeah.
McCarthy's first pick. This is, this Zimmer's his third defensive coordinator in 5 years. And I mean, have Mike McCarthy, who's done this forever, and Mike Zimmer, who's done it for even longer as a play caller, those are your play callers. Like, these guys all of a sudden get stupid, and are they incapable of coaching now? Or has the front office not provided them players they can win with?
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, after week one, it's like, hey, look great. They look great on defense. Yeah. I feel like the message until we get about halfway through the season is going to be, we have a lot of football left, right? Oh, we probably weren't going to go 16-1. They'll get, and next week it'll be, we probably weren't going to go 15-2. And they'll just keep saying that over and over again. All right, Ed and I have more to say. It is now time for stretch plays with former Cowboys scout and coach Glenn Stretch Smith. It is Glenn Stretch Smith, former Cowboys scout and coach. You can see his work on WFAA on Joe Trahan Sports Special. And Stretch 28-25, Cowboys lose. It was 28-6. We've seen this game before. It was a frantic comeback. Maybe they can use that as something. But just, Stretch, I think people are dying to hear your take on, you've been really good on some of these defensive tackles and some of the shortcomings they have, in that area. But Derrick Henry leaned on them, ran all over them, over 150 yards. Lamar Jackson, they got crushed with the run game. Can we start on that side of the ball and just talk about like the fact that Mike Zimmer's his second straight week, they've just gotten overwhelmed. What was your biggest takeaway from watching that performance?
Well, I think at the end of the day, I mean, if they don't become more physical with the two inside guys at holding the point. Now, right now, they've shown you in 2 different weeks that they're not able to physically take their 2 defensive tackles and hold up against the 3, which would be the center and the 2 guards, inside guys from New Orleans, nor did they do it today from Baltimore. They weren't able to hold up inside. I think they did a little better. And when I say a little, I'm going to give it to you right there. About that much, because I did see Mozzie Smith at least give great effort. Now, this is something to me that is an attitude. I mean, you have to play with great technique when your 2 are playing their 3, which means you got to have unbelievable base to be able to strike, and you have to be able to hold that base. Now, I didn't go to training camp. I don't know what they're teaching from a defensive line standpoint. I can tell you that as an inside guy, if you become a 2-gap player, which is what Mike Zimmer wants, this is opposite of, say, what Rod Marinelli wanted a few years ago, where he wanted his defensive tackles to get in certain gaps and get up the field. These are more of guys that they want to hold up the double team block so that the guard can't come up on the second level guy. And then that allows them to let Leofow, Hendricks, Overshown, Clark be able to run and make plays. Here's the problem, is when those 2 guys are getting knocked back into the laps of the linebacker, which I'm saying his lap, 4.5, 5 yards off of the football, he's not able to run. Now he's having to run that hump. And so when I say run the hump with the guy that's getting knocked back into you. when that happens, that's why you're seeing bigger backs, the two, especially today, and Henry. I mean, when they're not touching him for 3 or 4 yards down the field, becomes a real problem. Right now, I said it last week, and I'm going to say it again this week. The Cowboys have a personnel problem on the inside. It's a problem. And other teams have recognized that, and that's why you're seeing them go downhill and attack them. Now, today, you saw a zone read scheme with Lamar Jackson where he could pull it at times. There are times when he could run the jet sweep, act like he's handing that, and pull it to run it vertical. It's a very difficult scheme to defense. When your defensive tackles are getting knocked off of the football, you got problems. And I'm telling you, the blueprint is out there for how people are going to go to attack the Cowboys. They did it and put it out there last week. And you saw Baltimore come in here and basically just say, we're going to assault your defense. Now, last week we saw the Cowboys, they got rid of Jordan Phillips, moved him to IR. They called back Carlos Watkins from the Washington practice squad, who was previously here with the Cowboys. I don't know what else they can do right now to fix this issue, because it is a very glaring problem. They have a problem at defensive tackle, and it's a problem because they can't hold up against the run. And what is the Cowboys' strength on defense? This ability to get up the field and rush the passer. Well, they've got to get in a 3rd and 6+ scenario to get that done. In the last 2 weeks, both the Saints and Baltimore said, we're not going to put you in that position. We're not going to allow you to use your big dog and Micah Parsons. We're going to keep it to where we're going to just hammer you running the football. And that's exactly what they did, to the tune of 275 yards. Inside defensive F. You got to learn how to play the double team block. You must become more physical at the point of attack. Now then, when you can run the football, guess what that creates? That creates an ability to play action off of it. That creates a softer secondary. It creates you to have to bring a safety down in order to stop the run. So it is a multiple-pronged issue that they're dealing with. I do think that Zimmer tried to adjust a little bit to run some, what I would call run blitz schemes on the times that they were able to stop Baltimore. But it was already a situation where it was out of control. And so I'm really at a loss for, am I going to have to come on here with you 14 more times to discuss the fact that the Dallas defensive line can't get more physical at the point? And right now, I'm going to say it may be a situation where we have to do that. I hope that they can get to the bye week here. You're not going to change a lot playing the Giants. I do think that the Giants are not near as physical on the offensive front as the two teams you've seen. So you got a short week for the Giants. Then I believe it's Pittsburgh after a rest. And then you're going to have to start to implement some different defensive schemes in order to even have any chance or any prayer at saving what is going to be, right now feels like a long, really long season. And so defensively, I'm a little concerned. In the secondary, I thought both Hooker and Wilson would be more physical than they are. Right now, they're not doing that either. They're not coming down in there and attacking. And so I'm telling you, it could make for a very long, tough year for the Dallas Cowboys if they don't get this fixed. And I'm talking about get it fixed now. They're going to have to change some technique. I don't know what the defensive line coach teaches. Like I said, I didn't go to camp. They're going to have to do some things differently, and it isn't just going to be going in there and, blowing snot through your nose and a bunch of hot air. You're going to have to teach some guys to do some different things because there isn't the personnel you got. That's what you got.
Yeah, and they went to camp thin at that position, thin at running back, and now of course they got Bland hurt, and so you got Carson in there who's done some good things, but today misses a tackle, and that leads to a 60 or 70-yard play, just a whole jailbreak. I mean, I to your point, Stretch, there's a lot of just toss it out there and have a tight end, and maybe that's some of the safety play. But like a tight end run for 30 yards, right? Just in the open space. They did it, one missed tackle led to a huge play. Nobody's coming to help. It's like one missed assignment seems to lead to these massive plays.
Yeah. And again, when you've got to come out as the corner, and I know what you're talking about, Carson's, he's got to come inside out on that play. They're playing cover 3, and guess what? You got that deep third. So if you miss, he's going to run a ways. You can't miss in that situation. And that's the unfortunate side of playing with a young kid, and he'll get better. I do think he will get better. You'll get better there. You'll get better at linebacker. I think when Bland comes back, you'll have multiple guys that can cover. At the end of the day, I don't give a damn what anybody says about quarterbacks, throwing the football, taking deep shots. If you can't stop the run, you will not win. That's it. 274 yards rushing. That is an appetite for getting your ass kicked. And for 2 weeks in a row, you know what? They've got their ass kicked.
Okay, let's go over to the offensive side of the ball. And Jerry wanted to poo-poo the running back situation and go, hey, that's not a major factor in this really bad stretch they're in. But again, you talked about not being able to stop the run. What about not being able to run? 8 carries for 32 yards for Dowdle. Zeke barely really made any kind of impact on the game. Deuce got in there for a little bit. Honestly, the fullback was the most impressive of the running backs. The play he made downfield and the things he was doing in the passing game, that was about the best thing they had going from their stable of running backs. How tough is it to accomplish what the Cowboys need to accomplish with this lack of a running game?
Playing with 2 rookies in the offensive line, the center and the left tackle rookies. Do I think they'll get better? I do. Do I think it'll become easier to be able to call the run? I certainly hope so. They put Span forward in the game. He has 2 penalties early in the game. That's a situation that they've got to clean up. Dowdle runs the ball hard. I got no problem with his effort, his ability to run the ball. I think my issue is that it doesn't look like a very well coordinated, hey, this is what we want to attack and this is what we want to do. That may be unfair to say because they're behind so early in these games that it's like they have to get away from the run in order to try to match the scores with both New Orleans and Baltimore. They took the ball first, and I thought, okay, good. Let's change it up a little bit here, and let's see if you can go down and score. And they couldn't. So it's one of those things where I do think the offensive line will be better. I think Mike Solari is a really good offensive line coach. I feel they'll become, it's almost like the old slogan, bears on parade, dancing bears on parade. You got to have 5 guys really coming off the football. They'll get better with that. But again, personnel-wise, it's what you got. You paid the receiver a bunch of money, and you paid the quarterback a bunch of money, and now that's just what you got. The rest of the team, it really is what you got. And so Do I think that they could have an okay running attack if they get to where they're more well coordinated on the front five? I do believe that. Do I think we're going to see some sort of resurrection of the running game? No. So you're going to have to rely on the guy that you gave $60 million to. Hey, we'll play action a little bit off of the run, but we need to get better to where they can get to where they're running for 95 to 115 yards a game in order to take some of that load off of the quarterback and in order to be able to play action, where I think is his one sweet spot is his ability to play action and push the ball deep. So as far as the running game, it's, I mean, at best D, because of the effort that Dowdle gave. Otherwise, it's just, it's not good. I mean, this is not a good football team right now. They're 1-2, beat a really bad Cleveland team, and I get it. Baltimore is as good a team as there is in the AFC, but we saw what New Orleans did today. So, it's right now they're going to have to start looking for some answers in order to stop the run and in order to run the football, because I know everybody likes for you to get on and give all these fantasy football answers. But at the end of the day, if you can't run it and you can't stop the run, you're not going to win.
How'd you think the quarterback played?
I mean, he does some good things. It just, there's one or two balls in the game where he just got to throw the flat to Zeke. And he throws it in the ground. And I'm just like, what the hell was that? I mean, it's like and he'll do it 2 or 3 times a game. He'll let balls go that you're like, God, what was that? Do I think he understands? Do I think he's a leader? Do I think he understands how to get the football team in the right play? I do. With what I see, I'm not pertinent to the meetings or the practices. I'm just going on what I see on the film. But yeah, I think he played okay. Does he have to play better? $60 million. Hell yeah, he's got to be perfect. And I don't know that he can. I feel the same way about the receiver. I mean, the receiver, look, dude, you ain't been in camp, and I get all that. And guess what? They're going to double you. And you know what? Go beat double coverage. Get your ass off the ball and go freaking beat double coverage. I don't want to hear, well, they got him bracketed or he's under and over. Oh, bullshit. You know what? You're making $30-something million. You were the guy that wanted it. Now you're going to get the criticism when you don't produce.
All right. Quick turnaround stretch, and they got to play at the Giants, team they've dominated. Is there anything that makes you think that maybe they could go out there and have a good performance and maybe try to get this thing back on track?
I mean, I think you got to start stringing some quarters together. I mean, you saw a decent last quarter. I think the challenge would be you're not going to have time to put a whole new game plan in this week. You're going to have a bunch of stuff that's going to carry over from what you did in Baltimore. And so I think the challenge is to challenge the team and say, you got to go out and you got to, we got to carry this over and we got to string some quarters together. Hell, the best football player on the team right now is a damn kicker.
That's true. Bones Fossil, who if they had to fire McCarthy, who would be the interim coach? Bones? You can't really give it to Zim the way the defense is playing. Who would be the interim coach?
I would probably say, I would guess to say that it would probably be Schottenheimer's son. That's just
Ryan Schottenheimer. Well, maybe they'll get it going, and it won't come to that. But right now, it's headed in the wrong direction. Stretch, we always enjoy having you. You can hear him on ESPN Central Texas daily, and then you can see him on WFAA, and he's heard weekly on the Doomsday Podcast. Thank you very much, and thank you to Channel 8 for loaning us Stretch for the evening.
Hey, I appreciate you. Mosley, have you ever thought that maybe they're playing so bad because of that cut that you're sporting right now? Because it is awful. Get yourself a haircut. You look like a mutt. Goodbye, Mosley. You look like a mutt.
Well, appreciate the honesty, but I've been hearing a lot of compliments up here at Cowboys, and I'm hearing the opposite of that. Stretch, thank you very much. Have a great evening on TV, okay?
See you, Mosley.
There he goes, Glenn Stretch Smith. All right, and there was Stretch, and you earn your Fs. You earn your Fs from him. And,
I heard a lot of Fs today.
Yeah, we heard it. We heard it in the Cowboys locker room. We heard it on the mic. McQuamu, he wanted the ball, and we're going to take the effing ball, he said. Lots of cussing. And Ed,
Not a lot of winning.
You had lots of cussing, not much winning around here. And the Cowboys, the good news or the bad news is that they have to turn around and play quickly. They're spinning this as, it's a great thing. Go home, have fun with your family tonight, and then tomorrow is like a Thursday. Okay, they wake up on Monday and they got to be playing Thursday night, and it's like
The thing we don't know is, they've dominated the Giants decisively, really. Like I said, 12 straight wins. That's by far the longest winning streak any team in any division has against another member of its division. But I wonder what the record is of teams that have to travel and play the short week Thursday night game. I would bet it's not very good. So the Giants are going to have that advantage. And, to your point about, there's plenty of season. We've got problems. We get a lot of time to address them and overcome them. Well, teams that have started 1-2, as the Cowboys have done here, have made the postseason 32% of the time under the current playoff format. Not good. Fortunately, they don't play in a very good division.
Yes.
They play in a division where you think it's them or the Eagles. I guess we'll find out Thursday night if that's still true.
Well, and in each week in the NFL, we look at these teams and go, was that real? Are they really that great? And after seeing the Saints come through here, we were all like, whew, man, maybe they're on their way to doing something big. And they faced the Eagles today
at home
and scored 12 points. Yeah.
The team that scored 44 here went home against the Eagles and scored 12.
Yeah. And
on their own field,
15-12, and that was with Hurts making some huge mistakes, Sirianni making some coaching errors, and some really weird stuff. They still couldn't get it done. So, I think those of us who thought that wasn't totally real were probably right. But the Cowboys, again, outclassed by the Saints, outclassed by the Ravens. Browns got beat again today, so I think that win is looking less and less good. It's a week. Yes, it's a week-to-week proposition in this league. You get another crack at the Giants. But as you said, if they lose somehow to the Giants, you start thinking about if McCarthy's going to make it through the season. If they start 1-3 and get in that kind of hole, or does he throw someone overboard, which they've had to do before. They had to do with Mike Nolan. Did they wait till after the season with Mike Nolan?
Yeah.
They had to do an in-season O-line firing a few years ago. Would they fire Mike Zimmer during the season? They wouldn't want to. Jerry would feel horrible about it. But, if this keeps going on, you better put Al Harris or somebody in charge. You can't keep letting that happen week in, week out. That's embarrassing to go down 28-6. And now the Ravens are feeling good about themselves. And Jerry was saying something after the game. He's like, what did he say? That's a Super Bowl team or something.
Well, they had the best record in football last year, and they did make the AFC Championship game.
Yeah.
And
but he was saying that was a Super Bowl team. Okay.
It wasn't a Super Bowl team.
Okay.
The coach has won a Super Bowl, but not with this quarterback.
Jerry had a funny moment that I meant to bounce off of you, and I think you were there for it. He said something about, people were like, what makes you feel like you can turn this around or get this going? What makes you feel okay about this team? And Jerry, which he always kind of tries to come back to, goes, well, I like a quarterback. And you're kind of like, okay. And then he just got out of the blue goes, he's the highest paid player in the entire league. And it was just like that the statement it wasn't attached to anything. It was almost kind of like him.
I would say Jerry is trying to deflect blame that he might be receiving as a general manager who put this roster together onto the fact that he was forced to overpay Dak Prescott.
You think that's what he kind of was getting at in the moment?
Well, that's how I would take it.
Y'all asked me to do this. Everybody was on me about not paying this quarterback and letting him go for the year. I did it, and now we're 1-2.
Yeah. But you want to blame me.
Yeah. When you guys want to blame me. And boy, he is feisty on the running back by committee. He's feisty on a couple things. I did not have the heart to ask him about something that resurfaced about, him speaking about somebody's body part. And by the way, the morning news chose to just go ahead and here's the word.
They wrote something.
Yes. And whoever is the main person said, yes, put that in print.
Whose byline was that?
I don't know. Let's call it David Moore.
I would say they would keep it. If I was David Moore, I would expect to be protected from that. If you want me out there covering this team and this owner, you need to protect me from that. That cannot be my byline.
Remind me who he was talking about, or was he just a fictional player? He was like doing so. I know what it was. He was talking to Jamie Foxx at training camp, and he was being funny. And Jamie Foxx, for his Instagram, was recording it, and Jerry's going through some sort of deal, and he says 5'11", and he talks about
size of his hand,
9 3/4, and then he's got
something else.
Jerry was just doing his thing up there. Okay, Ed, anything as they get ready to face the Giants, and as this season seems to be on the brink, and right now, if you're talking about the hot seats across this league, I think Mike McCarthy, you name me somebody who's hotter. I mean, even his seat is hotter than the guy they're about to face, than Dayball with the Giants, Sirianni with the Eagles. They're coming off a big win today. Just about anybody. I don't know.
Quinn's the only one in the division who's safe beyond this year because he's in his first year and he's got a rookie quarterback that he's starting with number 2 overall pick, Jaden Daniels. So he's obviously going to be there. But this is the one situation where the owner made a conscious decision not to extend a coach who just won 12 regular season games 3 years in a row. Made a conscious decision when he hired Mike Zimmer to be the defensive coordinator not to sign him to a multi-year contract. So he has invested nothing in this coaching staff beyond this year.
Yeah, and it shows.
Like I said, is it the coaches? Is it the general manager? Or is it the players?
Who's the interim coach, did you say? Bones Fossil. Bones Fossil by week 8 will be leading this team. This thing is going straight in the tank.
I don't know how they're going to afford Brandon Aubrey at this point.
I don't know. I would like a public apology on camera, look at the camera and say, Mosley, I'm sorry last night that I texted you in one of your just worst, horrible moments in a horrific Baylor loss on a Hail Mary.
So I'm going to end with this. I'm sitting there on the couch and I'm watching this horror show by your head coach who's calling timeouts and giving CU time to discuss how they want to make one last throw to the end zone. And instead of taking advantage of any miscommunication or rush that they're forced into. So I thought, what is it Randy Galloway would text in this moment to Matt Mosley? And I thought he would keep it simple and just say, nice effing team.
That's not what you said, though.
And as a nod to your spirituality,
you left out the
I
F
left
word.
out the F.
Yeah. But it happened. I mean, it was like just in that horrible moment, you did it right then. Randy had actually been texting me and was saying, I'm praying for the Bears to beat. You remember his relationship with Dion. Yes. So he was rooting against Dion and praying for the Bears. Ed was not. Ed, we'll do this.
Okay.
We'll do this on Thursday evening.
We will?
Yes. Thursday evening, late night. What is that? 7:15 kickoff.
Gonna be about midnight.
Where do they put these things on? Amazon? Do you
Amazon.
have that?
I have
Are you
Amazon.
subscribing to that?
I'm an Amazon subscriber.
I think Amazon tried to hire Ed,
The
but
blue
Ed was
truck
holding
comes by
out.
quite a bit at the order
I
house.
bet.
So
I bet
I think that's part of our package.
Plenty of deliveries, yes. So we'll see it. Of course, Al and Herb Street, one of the most tremendous chemistry between those two. And they'll be doing the game Thursday night.
I just watched to see the dog, man. I'm a big
Golden
Retriever fan.
Very tired of the dog. I'll say that. I think we've been way too much on the dog. On the Herb
Speaking
Street
of dogs,
dog.
the Cowboys lost.
And speaking of dogs, this season has gone in the Esser. It's Mosley. It's Ed. Hopefully we brought you just a little bit of levity, but it's also some truth. Right now, this thing's trending in the wrong direction. They'll have a shot to get back to this Thursday. The Doomsday Podcast. It's a dose of truth. And we will be with you Thursday evening. Everybody have a great night, and we will talk to you soon. It's Doomsday.
We are Rogue Media Sports. Are you a podcaster? Let's talk podcast hosting. Are you tired of your current podcast host? Need real support in a community that gets it? At Rogue Media Network, we offer top-tier podcast hosting services to help you thrive. From hosting and distribution to dedicated support, we've got you covered. Starting as low as $25 a month. Join our community of passionate podcasters today. Contact us at hello@roguemedianetwork.com.